Okay, we're going to begin with some untimed warm-up. We'll give you a little bit of an extension, and I will be the question.
And I will answer.
It's not timed. Everybody ready? Beginning with a question for the record. Just reminded me of one thing.
Yes.
The placards with the numbers in the photographs, the large ones, those are like plastic placards, right?
Yes.
Next to them, some of the items have little white pieces of paper that is folded, like standing up, tent-shaped thing.
Yes.
On one you pointed to, I think, a red piece of paper. So when you initially put your placards down with the numbers, you put them as near as you can to where the items are marked with the white card, the folded cards, right?
Right. Sometimes we move, usually they're white or orange cards, whatever the officers or the detectives mark the items with. A lot of times on a casing, it's right on top of it. We'll move that paper and put the placard down next to the item. So the item is not moved. That piece of paper may be.
So if a detective comes out to the scene and there's a shell casing, they might take a business card or something, fold it in half, and put it directly over there.
Correct.
So you have to move it in order to take the photograph.
You have to move the paper, yes.
But once you put the placards down, the numbered placards, do they stay in the same place? Or do you move those if you move the card?
No, they're in the place where I see the item. That's where the placard goes.
And then you don't move it even if you move the white card?
Right.
No other questions. Okay, they're going to bring on another witness now. Beginning with the question for the record. Have a seat over here, please. Would you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
First name is Stephen with a V. Last name is Capps. C-A-P-P-S.
Thank you. Where are you employed, sir?
Employed by the city of Stockton as a police officer.
How long have you been so employed?
In a couple days, it will be 19 years.
What was your involvement on April 2nd, April 3rd at the location of Weber and Sierra Nevada and Main Streets?
I'm currently assigned in the robbery homicide division of the police department. That evening, I received a call that there had been a double homicide and to respond to the scene.
What time?
I responded to the scene at I received the call at 11:54 p.m. in the evening, and I arrived on scene about 12:52.
8 minutes to 1?
Yes, sir.
What was your responsibility there at the scene?
I was assigned as the scene investigator.
You know, when these kinds of cases happen, is there a division of labor?
Yes, sir, there is.
One maybe interviews witnesses, one person looks at the scene.
That's correct.
You tell us. I shouldn't be telling. Tell us how it works.
Well, the way that you stated, there are 3 guys assigned to the homicide teams. 2 will be the investigators who will do the interviews. Myself, I was assigned to the scene investigation, which would cover the actual scene.
Okay. So we've already, first of all, do you know the person just got off the stand?
Yes, I do, sir.
What name do you know her by?
Tony Jurovich.
And did you direct her that night?
Yes, sir, I did.
Were you the one in charge of the scene?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. And we've already heard from others about the scene. So let me just ask you a few questions, about, have you seen this exhibit, People's 13, before?
Yes.
The one that's on the screen?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. Did you, when you were there at the scene, have you done this before, by the way, gone to a homicide and been in charge of the scene?
Yes, sir, I have.
Is it important to pay attention to lighting sources, weather, those kinds of things?
Yes, sir.
Tell us, for example, in this case, did you note what light sources there were near the area of the shootings?
Yes, I did.
With the laser, can you tell us if they show up on this diagram, People's 13, and explain for the record what you're referring to?
Okay. Right here is a street light, and that's located on the south side of Weber Avenue at the intersection of Weber and Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada is the street that runs north-south. East-west is Weber Avenue. And located right there is a functioning street light.
Okay. That night it was functioning?
Yes, sir.
Any other sources of light near that Weber market that are in the diagram that you can show us?
There is a light on the halogen lamp to the front of the store that was also working. There is a street light.
I'm sorry. Does that show on People's 19?
Yes, sir, it does. There is a halogen lamp right in that area, right
above the sign that says Weber?
above the sign. And there is a second halogen lamp located right there.
On the Sierra Nevada side of the street?
On Sierra Nevada. Both of those lights were functioning on that evening.
Okay. And what about elsewhere around the area of the scene? Were there other light sources?
Right here.
Okay. I think we heard about that one. The one near 22 North Sierra Nevada.
Yes, sir.
That's drawn in there in the diagram.
Yes, sir.
Was that working that night?
Yes, sir, it was.
Did you see any other functioning sources of light that night that are noted here in the diagram?
There are several lights along the interior and exterior portion of 15 North Sierra Nevada.
Are they drawn in with the yellow domes on the sketch?
Yes, sir.
People's 13? Okay. Is that about it?
That's about it.
What were the weather conditions that night? Did you happen to make a note of that? Do you recall? Or the moon, if you recall?
I believe it was cool, little or no breeze, and I don't recall whether or not about the moon.
Well, you were out there that night at 8 minutes to 1 in the morning, out there around Weber Market. Give us an idea what the lighting sources, you've already described them for us, but give us an idea of the degree to which you could see other officers or other people down the street, or that you couldn't see them. Give us an idea if you can.
The front of the store area right in here was well lit. Almost you could see plain. I could see officers. I could see patrol vehicles. Right in this area, right along the east curb line where the light fixture was, where that was functioning, it's a standard normal lighting from a street light, so you could see well there, as well as down here on the east side of Sierra Nevada. I can't see with the plant, but right there.
I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Okay, with Exhibit 22.
22, right here, that street light was functioning. You could see the driveways and the entire east side of the sidewalk, as well as a portion of the street out in there. As you looked from the street light up this way, I could see the entire corner, see officers walking around.
Okay, so what did you end up doing there at the scene?
Directed FET, or evidence technician Jurovich, to collect items of evidence.
Okay, we've already asked her about, were you there, by the way, when she was putting the placards down and taking the photograph of the placard and collecting the item next to the placard?
Yes, sir.
So we've covered that with her. Let me just ask you about the ballistics evidence in this case. Did you notice different types of ballistics evidence there at the scene?
Yes, sir, I did.
In what way did they appear to differ?
There was different caliber shell casings left at the scene.
Could you just give us an idea? Could you come down with the court's permission to People's 15 on the diagram?
Sure.
Show us where were there two different types?
The two different types. There was 9mm and 40 caliber. There, were 21 shell casings in total.
Altogether, 21 shell casings?
Yes, sir.
Are you pretty familiar with firearms?
I have a general knowledge of firearms. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm going to be calling somebody else later and get a comparison. But in general, what is a casing? When you say there were 21 casings,
You have the actual casings, which is where the bullet sits with the powder, and the head of the bullet is seated into the casing. There's a primer on the back of the casing, which is fired by the firing pin, which will send the projectile out through the barrel of the weapon. Expended casings, when I say casings, there were 21 expended casings that were found at the scene.
we're going to pause there for okay, back on the record with a question. Okay, let me just ask you a question. When you shoot a gun, certain types of guns, you shoot a gun and the casing, like in the movies, you see the casing comes flying out of the gun.
The casing is ejected from the port, correct?
That's the technical word. You found 21 of those,
Yes, sir.
2 different types,
Yes, sir.
9s and what else?
40 caliber.
Could you show us where the 40 caliber were
Sure.
in People's 15? I'll give you this blue magic marker. Maybe you could circle them and do an arrow somewhere showing us.
Okay.
Okay, can you just tell us for the record what you drew in there on People's Exhibit number 15?
The area that I circled on People's Exhibit 15 is the area where the 40 caliber shell, expended shell casings were located.
And just so we have an orientation here. Where was the blood from the body? You see the A, B.
A, B shell.
Don't write it down. Just, can you point
Yeah,
with the laser?
A, B is here. That's where the 2 blood drops were found in the street. Shell casings, 40 caliber, are in here. This one right here is actually a 9mm shell casing that was mixed in with the 40 caliber.
Is there a color code there?
Yes.
What colors are the 9s?
The 9mm shell casings are color coded in red. The orange and the blue colors depict the 40 caliber shell casings.
And I know on the projector it might be hard to distinguish between the red and the orange, but in the original, can you make it out clearly which is orange and which is red?
Yes, you can.
For the record, in People's 15, this circle represents where the 40 calibers were found.
Yes, sir.
What about the 9mm? What was the other caliber?
9mm.
Where were the 9mm found?
Up here.
Can you circle that on this exhibit
Sure.
with the red magic marker, please, on People's 15?
Okay.
3 locations.
3 locations.
For 9mm. Up there near Weber Market and near where the body was.
Correct.
For the 9s. And the 40s are closer to where the body is?
Correct.
Thank you. You can return to your seat, please. Now, alrighty, let me look at my notes, see if I have any other questions for you. Let me show you this exhibit, People's 32, which we've already seen before. Have you seen this gun, by the way, before?
No, this is the first time I've seen it.
You're familiar with this type of gun?
That is a Glock,
Semi-automatic.
semi-automatic 40 caliber.
How do you load it?
You take the magazine and slide the magazine up through the handle and then pull back the slide, and that slides in a round into the chamber.
Okay. Is this the kind of gun that leaves casings when you fire it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this will be 5 minutes at 120 words per minute. Okay. Beginning with a question for the record. Do you remember what time you left Bailey's Tavern in downtown Granger?
Yes, somewhere around 4:30 in the afternoon.
Why did you leave the tavern?
My son Greg had called me.
Now, where did you go when you left the tavern?
I proceeded up to Daisy Street near my house.
Did you have your purse with you?
Yes, I did.
When you got to Daisy Street, what did you do?
Well, as I was rounding the corner, I noticed my grandpa was standing in front of his house. I talked to him for a few minutes in front of the house. Then I went in to visit with him and my grandmother. I checked how things were going for them.
How long were you there?
About 15 minutes.
Then where did you go?
As I came out of my grandpa's house, my son Greg was standing there, so I walked over to talk to him.
Was he coming or going? Do you know?
Well, he lives with my grandparents, and he was coming home to change clothes to go to his night job.
What happened after you talked to your son?
Well, I went back in my grandparents' house and fixed them something for dinner while Greg changed. Then we walked over to Aaron Whitley's house.
What did you do when you got to Mr. Whitley's house?
Well, he said he had some things he wanted to show us, so we went down to the basement of his house.
What kinds of things?
He had a couple of TVs, some computers, and all kinds of electric stuff laying on the floor in the basement.
Was he trying to sell this stuff to you?
Yeah, he asked us if we wanted to buy anything. He said it was surplus items from the Best Buy store where he worked, and his boss wanted him to get rid of it.
Did you believe his story?
Yeah.
Did you buy anything from Mr. Whitley?
No.
Did your son buy anything from Mr. Whitley?
Not at that time.
How long were you over at Mr. Whitley's residence?
About an hour.
What did you do during that hour?
We talked about each of the items he had for sale.
Did you take any items or buy any items?
No, he offered us one of the printers for free.
Did you take the printer?
No.
Okay. Now, after that, what did you do?
We came out of the basement, and just then a car pulled up.
Can you identify the car, the type, the make?
Well, it was a late model. It looked new. It may have, I don't remember the brand. It may have been a VW black in color. I remember the shiny hubcaps is all.
What happened then?
Well, two guys got out of the car and started talking to Aaron. I could hear them asking about the stuff he had for sale. We kept walking.
Do you know whether or not Aaron had advertised the items he had for sale?
I don't know.
What happened then?
Well, my son had to go to work, so we started walking back to my grandparents' house.
As you were walking, did you hear any arguing between the two men and Aaron?
Yeah, I heard some yelling.
What were they saying?
I don't remember. Well, I really couldn't hear at all.
Do you think you could identify those two men if you saw them again?
Yes.
Are they seated here in the courtroom?
Yes, they are.
Please point them out for the court and jury.
They are sitting over there.
What are they wearing?
Well, one has a black suit with a gray tie. The other one has a blue suit with a blue shirt.
All right, we're going to do another 5-minute section. We're going to start out at 1:30 and then drop back down to 1:20, beginning with a question for the record. Now, as you were walking away, did you look back?
No, Greg and I were talking about the items and wondering where they came from. It seemed kind of odd that Aaron would have the items from Best Buy. You would think Best Buy would sell them off themselves. It seemed odd to us.
Did you ever think that the items might be stolen?
I don't know.
When did you first hear the sound of gunshots?
As we were walking up the sidewalk to my grandparents' house.
What did you do?
Well, we weren't sure where the noise was coming from.
Did you know if it was the sound of gunshots?
Not really.
What did it sound like to you?
Well, it was a pop, pop, pop sound. It could have been a car or a motorcycle. Greg and I were not sure what it was.
Did you say anything to Greg at that time?
I said, "What is that?"
Did Greg respond?
He said, "It sounds like a car backfiring." So we just went in my grandparents' house.
How soon after the pop, pop, pop sound did you hear sirens?
Less than 5 minutes later.
Where were you at that time?
Standing on the front porch with Greg.
What did you do?
Well, we saw the police cars rushing by. I looked at Greg. We looked at each other. Somehow we knew something had happened at Aaron's house.
What did you do?
We started running over to Aaron's house around the corner on Pine.
What did you see?
We saw 5 or 6 police cars surrounding the area there.
Did you keep on running?
Yes.
What happened then?
Well, we ran right up to Aaron's house. We saw him on the ground there with blood running out of his chest. He was almost dead, I thought. His eyes were rolled back in his head, and he was like gurgling blood out of his mouth. I screamed, and Greg just kept shouting, "No, no, no." It was a terrible sight to see.
Did the police stop you from going near Aaron?
Yes,
Was anyone else in the area that you recognized?
just the neighbors came out. I did not know them by name.
Were Aaron's parents home? Do you know?
Well, he lives there with his dad. His mom lived somewhere else at the time, so nobody else was home.
Did the police question you at that time?
Yes.
What did they say?
Well, they asked us if we had seen anything. Did we know Aaron? Did we know what happened?
What did you say?
Well, we told them just what I have told you. That was all we knew.
I see. Now let's go back in time, ma'am. At any time in the past, had Aaron tried to sell you merchandise from his basement?
Yes, several times. He even took my grandpa over there once to look at a TV.
Did your grandpa ever buy anything from Aaron?
Not that I know of.
Did you ever buy anything from Aaron?
Never.
To your knowledge, did your son ever buy anything from Aaron?
Not that I know of.
How long had you known Aaron?
Since he was a little kid. Greg and Aaron were friends at school. Aaron dropped out of school in the 10th grade and got into trouble with the law, I think.
Was your son ever part of the group that hung out with Aaron in the parking lot of Shakey's Pizza near the Best Buy?
No.
So your son kind of distanced himself from Aaron. Is that correct?
Yeah, he did. He did not want any trouble with the law.